Well, we had projected the draft was going to be about defense. It was a big boy draft of defense and offensive linemen. 26 of the first 32 picks were either defensive players or offensive linemen, hardly any skill guys chosen. But obviously, it was an enormous storyline as to who got where and who took whom and why certain guys were allowed to sit there for an extended period of time. Let's just, off the top of my head, recap quickly. Tennessee, as we projected, they took Cam Ward, the Miami Hurricane quarterback. He won everybody over with his meetings. Now he's got to prove he can do it on the field. I'm not going to say he's a can't-miss prospect, but obviously when you're the number one pick in the draft, you've done a lot of positive things. Jacksonville made the bold trade, which nobody saw coming. They flipped with Cleveland. Jags drafted number 2. They went out and they got the 2-position player, Travis Hunter. They got themselves then the next morning the surprise press conference where they said he's going to be a wide receiver, and then he'll play nickelback occasionally on third downs. He's a 2-position guy. It'll be intriguing to see if he's a better wideout than he was cornerback. I thought he was a great cornerback at Colorado. The Giants drafted 3rd. They took the big Penn State pass rusher, Abdul to go with all the other guys they've got on defense. New England at number 4 started a drive to protect their quarterback, Drake May. New England went out and got Will Campbell, the massive left tackle. Everybody that I've canvassed with, scouts and player personnel people, said this is a can't-miss kid. He's going to play for more than a decade or so. So that's interesting to see that situation with New England beginning to fix the situation around their quarterback. And then there's Cleveland. Cleveland trades down to 5, and Cleveland doesn't take a quarterback. And Cleveland takes a massive defensive tackle. They took the Michigan man, and that was pretty impressive in getting Mason Graham. And he fits right in because they do have a lot of other needs, but he'll make them much better up front with Myles Garrett and all the other people they have. So that's how the top of the draft went. Now, after that, just stick with me here. Let me just run through this quickly, because the draft historically, John's always about quarterbacks. Well, it wasn't about quarterbacks this year. Obviously, it was about Cam Ward, but beyond that, it was not. New Orleans Saints, Pittsburgh Steelers bypass quarterbacks. Wow, in the first round. The Giants then traded a number 1 next year. They jumped into the first round at the end of the first round, and the Giants took Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, and he had gotten progressively better and better and better his 3 years with Lane Kiffin. New Orleans, which seemingly has a quarterback crisis, took Taylor Shuck, got to prove he can play at this level, but the guy was a one-man team at the University of Louisville. Seattle got a gem. They think they can polish this uncut rock, Jalen Milroe. They got him later in the second and third rounds. Milroe from Alabama will be the quarterback of the future, probably in Seattle. Later in the draft, Cleveland took the mighty might, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. I was stunned he went where he went. He's going to get the chance to come in and compete. To me, he looks a little undersized. Philadelphia stepped out of character. They took another quarterback. They don't need a quarterback, but they took Kyle McCord, the gunslinger from Syracuse. The only thing is, McCord is not the athlete that Jalen Hurts is. He doesn't fit the system that Philadelphia's running. So I thought that was kind of a strange selection. Pittsburgh, which hadn't taken a quarterback, took a quarterback late. They took a game manager late. Will Howard from Ohio State. Intellectual kid. We'll find out whether or not he can play in the NFL. I have huge reservations, but that's why he was on the board so long. And then late in the draft, the Raiders went into 1AA football. The Raiders went into the Big Sky Conference. The Raiders took Tommy Mellott, kind of a 2-position quarterback, tight end, whatever, from Montana State. Pretty good Big Sky Conference player. But they took Tommy Mellott, and then they took Cam Miller, the star-studded quarterback from North Dakota State. So they took these 2 unique kids from 1AA football. So it was really interesting in the way the dominoes fell in the draft as it relates to quarterbacks. We're going to talk about the other quarterback who sat on the board forever. Talk about that in a minute. But your response to the top of the board, your response to the quarterback derby.
First of all, I love the spectacle of the whole event, and the way they have that big platform. It's like a county fair out there, and everyone's jacked up. And then to see the young men come out, and they're all just dripping right now with their outfits. You're talking about, what was it, Will Howard, I think it was, or the lineman, what was it?
No, Campbell.
Campbell, pardon me, Will Campbell, pardon me. He had that striped suit on, and I just love seeing all those guys out there.
I wonder how you would look in Travis Hunter's pink.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that one, but it was interesting the way they started off with the choir, kind of class the joint up. They had that spooky national anthem, but the event itself is wonderful. 2 Michigan men in the top 5, right?
Yep.
That's interesting to me. Yeah, obviously the quarterback situation was wild. But for example, Pittsburgh took Will Howard. Pittsburgh is playing coy for a lot with their quarterback decision making. They got rid of some of guys. They weren't willing to commit to Aaron Rodgers. Do they really think Will Howard is going to be a guy that's going to compete with Mason Rudolph, or what do you think is going to happen there?
I think Aaron Rodgers is going to sign in Pittsburgh probably within a week.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get done. I think Pittsburgh probably knew that. Aaron Rodgers probably dropped that hint. Otherwise, they'll just run the football, play defense, and hope that Mason Rudolph can just manage it. But I don't think anybody's excited in Pittsburgh if Mason Rudolph's a starting quarterback. I think once Aaron Rodgers decides to do this, then I'll think they'll get excited. Because remember, Pittsburgh traded for DK Metcalf, the big wide receiver, and Pittsburgh drafted a big-time running back, and Pittsburgh still has George Pickens. So I happen to think that Aaron Rodgers still has gas left in the tank. And if Aaron Rodgers can play the way this thing is structured under Mike Tomlin, he's going to make a difference because he'll make some plays down the field for the bunch of tight ends and the big receiver they just got from Seattle.
It's one other question about the draft. You notice how the fans love booing the commissioner whenever he comes up to the podium?
Yeah, it happens at every sport now.
Well, because it kind of had like World Wrestling entertainment vibes, like Vince McMahon kind of a thing. But it was cool, like the history of Green Bay and the bicycles and the way he came out on the bike. And then they bring all these former players from Wisconsin that were there. I just think they do the draft really well. I mean, look how far it's come from just being in a hotel banquet room, from like 30, 40 years ago.
They package it very well. And then the cheeseheads show up. 250,000 people. When they did the drone shots, couldn't believe how many people were there. And it rained, and they were still out there. So the cheeseheads, they had put on a great show, and the draft has become a spectacle. And then obviously what happened during the draft broadcast, that became a spectacle too. We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
So anyhow, that's where we are with the top picks, the blue chippers, and that's where we are with the quarterback derby.